link out there on Twitter. Let's bring our man Ant-Man in here. Anthony Slater of ESPN. Of course, everybody knows that by now because he is literally all over the television the last couple of days. Ant-Man, appreciate you making time for us. I mean, the clock is ticking on this Jonathan Kuminga thing. You are more locked in than anybody else. What do you think the resolution on this winds up being?
I mean, we're in the end game of these negotiations. There's a reason, the offers are rising and changing and countering, and in a lot of ways, there's a reason why it's public. So it's Warriors and Kuminga looking at each other. At this point, the Warriors have not reopened, sign and trade conversations, and I expect it to end with Jonathan Kuminga on the Warriors to start next season. But the big question is it going to be a contract he likes and he accepts and he signs and at least, tries to buy in early in the season with the understanding he might be traded? Or is it this qualifying offer, nuclear bomb, which obviously is not good for either side, but, is obviously remaining to be threatened by Kuminga's side?
Do you feel that Joe Lacob and the Warriors side is starting to get a little antsy with wanting to have a resolution to this Kuminga saga, whether it's him signing, relatively long-term deal, whether it's him signing a qualifying offer, or them just saying, we're ready to move on from all this? Do you think they've gotten to that point, or are they just kind of like, all right, let's negotiate? Is it not as drastic as that just yet?
I mean, I think the fact that, they've come back to the table and really kind of offered these firm deals that include, I think, like they've been upped, which would signal, to some degree, they're trying to get it done. They're trying to get it done last week when they're putting these offers on the table. So yes, to answer your question. Now, when you talk to them, they try to, I guess, emanate a level of calmness about the situation. And even, they make arguments about why the qualifying offer wouldn't be as, disastrous as, you would think it would be. That's a massive amount of tax savings. Hey, they'll have his bird rights next season. You can point back to when Klay Thompson left. People would probably think Klay Thompson left in unrestricted free agency for nothing, but Klay Thompson wanted a contract in unrestricted free agency from a Mavericks team that couldn't, do it. So they worked Klay Thompson into a sign and trade and got Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson. I only mention that because their idea is, sure, Jonathan Kuminga could go to unrestricted free agency next summer, but if he wants to go somewhere, Kings, for example, that may not be able to give him the contract he wants with just straight cap space, it would again have to be via sign and trade. So they're saying, hey, look, we feel like we put fair offers on the table. Clearly they do not want him on the qualifying offer. They want him either to play for him this season or trade him in January, or both. But they're trying to say it's not absolutely, end all be all if he comes back for $7.9 million.
Man, it's been difficult to kind of make heads or tails of what's going on in this situation. And I think you even wrote about this, Anthony, in your most recent article about how, you've upped these offers. If you're Golden State, you've upped these offers. Meanwhile, Jonathan Kuminga and his representatives are kind of like, yeah, but you've been, Steve Kerr has been talking a certain way about Jonathan Kuminga, certainly after the playoffs, talking about how do you fit him in here with Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, Steph, all of this different things. We pulled up his basketball reference page earlier, and he misses 30 games just in the middle of the season. He's inactive. And it's like, it's hard to reconcile this idea of, oh, there's this newfound role for him, when it feels like at least the post Jimmy version of the Golden State Warriors, you didn't really have a role for him.
Yeah, that 30-game absence is important. He had a bad ankle sprain, and by the time he got back, he was actually playing very well before, but by the time he got back, they had acquired Jimmy and their season had turned around, and he just didn't, fit, in Steve Kerr's opinion, in that, kind of post-Jimmy rotation. As far as one of the things, you mentioned it there, one of the things that Kuminga's side has continued to voice to the Warriors in this situation is they need to sell the contract, not the basketball, because the Warriors are sitting there, trying to compare their contracts with the Kings and the Suns and what they're theoretically willing to do. And Kuminga's side saying there's, guaranteed starting role, there's a fresh start, there's player options in those deals. You need to go above and beyond for Kuminga to feel wanted and to feel a desire to return there, because he knows what he's returning to. And that's, an uncertain role. That's not a starting job. That is, the Jalen Green experience in Houston, where Jalen Green, and this is the contract they have used as a comparison with the Warriors of something he signed. Jalen Green got paid and a player option, knowing that Houston was kind of doing it because they wanted to use him as the big salary piece to maybe go get, the star, which of course they did this summer, right? They used the Jalen Green contract to go get Kevin Durant, and Jalen Green has a $36 million player option at the end of his deal, in some part because of that. And Kuminga side saying, look, not only do we know what we're signing up for on the floor, we know what we're signing up for in the business world, which is like, I'm a trade piece. And they're saying, give us a player option to pay for us accepting being a trade piece, basically.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And that was something I was going to ask you too, Anthony. The Kings and what their reported feelings are on Jonathan Kuminga and what they've talked to him about and the role that they would want him to play here in Sacramento obviously has to be everything that Jonathan Kuminga is looking for. Do you think it's a situation where he would not literally hold out, but like he's standing firm on getting everything he wants? Because look, there's a team willing to do everything that you guys won't do and pay me almost just as much. What are you guys bringing to the table outside of controlling my rights again?
Yeah, I'd say a few things on the Kings situation. I do think that has, his conversations with the King have enticed and emboldened him to believe that like there are, situations out there in the world, even if it's not now, that will give him the type of runway he thinks if he gets, he will take off. And the Kings, his conversations with the Kings, well, I personally, I would say I do not think he's going to be a Sacramento King, a month from now. I think part of this process for him is not only the recruitment, but the long-term relationship. He's met Scott Perry in person. This guy may be traded at the deadline. He may be an unrestricted free agent next summer. And I think, it's relationship building in some way, even if it isn't something Sacramento's able to get now. And then from the Kuminga side, it's interesting because, you can't have these conversations when you're under contract with the team, right? Jonathan Kuminga couldn't just meet Scott Perry when he's in the third year of his rookie contract with the Warriors, but he is technically a free agent right now, even if it's restricted, and the Warriors clearly have so much leverage in the situation. But I think he spent this summer, having those type of conversations out in the world, out in the NBA world, to know like what the league thinks of him. And the Sacramento Kings clearly have shown they are very intrigued by his future. And while, again, I'm not sure that's going to bear any fruit for the Kings in the current moment, I think it's very possible, over the next couple of years that it could bear fruit.
So like talking, so that's kind of like a longer term outlook. And we've talked about, the Golden State Warriors. You even started this conversation saying you think this ends with Jonathan Kuminga playing for the Golden State Warriors this year, whether it's on the qualifying offer or something else. What happens with the Sacramento Kings when this is over? Anything?
I think they seem to be comfortable, with I'll just say this, Scott Perry's coming into what we would all agree is kind of a cleanup job, right? And it's
one way of putting it.
Yes. I think he's being prudent. He's trying to, you guys have talked about it all summer. Like there's some appeal to Kuminga, but it's not just throwing the chips, you're going to get prime LeBron, do whatever you can. I think if it's an appealing enough opportunity at the price that they want, they'll jump. And if not, I think they're taking a patient approach. Scott Perry's not under, a firm thumb that everything has to be solved within 2 months of his tenure. It can be a long-term approach. And I typically believe that's the healthier way to operate, right? When you feel pressure and you feel you have to be in the playoffs this year or people's jobs are on the line, like that can lead to panic decisions. So, where does it leave the Sacramento Kings if they don't get Kuminga? And I don't believe they're going to. I don't know, with the roster they have, which I think we'd all agree is flawed and, at best is probably play-in. Some people would maybe even have them out of the play-in. But, Scott Perry has time to watch a couple months of basketball, see what pieces he likes, see what pieces he doesn't. They probably got to figure out, extension talks with Keegan Murray and figure out who's part of this long-term plan and who's not. But at least you would think Scott Perry's going to have time to do all that.
I agree with you. I don't think he comes to Sacramento. I do think they find some type of resolution in Golden State, and that's where Kuminga ends up. But I'll ask you the question. If it wasn't the Sacramento Kings, if it wasn't right down 80, do you think it would be different? Do you think one of the reasons why Golden State is reluctant to maybe move on from Kuminga and give him what he's looking for is the fact that he is trying to go right next door to the Sacramento Kings, and they don't want to see him there if he does blossom into what Joe Lacob thinks he could become?
I'm sure that could be like a small part of flipping the decision to yes or no if it got even close to that. But from my understanding, they just don't like the Kings packages. They do not. From what Malik Monk, they don't want his contract. They don't really want Malik Monk. So they basically turned down those type of deals. Obviously, if first round picks and all the protections and all that have kind of been haggled over, but it hasn't been close. And if the Kings were to blow them away, maybe if the Kings were to, I wouldn't advise this for Sacramento, and I don't think it would ever be on the table. But if suddenly a Keegan Murray and a Keon Ellis were in the conversation, I don't think they would, blink and say, oh, well, we don't want to send Jonathan Kuminga up the road. I think if it was appealing enough, they would do it. They just haven't found anything the Kings have offered appealing enough.
Ant-Man, we'll get you out on this one, man. We know how busy you are. And this is something that we've discussed amongst ourselves on numerous occasions. If, with all due respect, if Aaron Turner was Rich Paul, would this situation have been dealt with a long time ago?
Perhaps. I don't know, because I would say Jonathan Kuminga is a very opinionated, strong-willed character within all this, and I think I know him very well. And he is the one deciding whether to decline or accept these offers. He has taken a large part of this process. So it's hard to answer that question because I don't know. And I think there's so many complex factors that have played into Kuminga's 4 seasons and, why an extension was or wasn't done last summer. I know obviously one of the factors was the Warriors didn't want to poison pill his contract, which is, CBA terminology, but basically if they had given him an extension last year, they pretty much couldn't have traded him in season, and they almost traded him to Phoenix for Kevin Durant. He would have been part of that deal. So it's just, there's so many layers to this. Aaron Turner is obviously a character within all the layers of this, but Jonathan Kuminga has some strong opinions about the situation as well. And I think he, has a large part of this process is those opinions by him.
Understood. Ant-Man, we appreciate you. We're proud of you. It's always great to see that backyard on ESPN. That's
the landscaping looking fire back there too. I see you, big dog.
That's our guy right there.
Hey, I mowed that lawn myself.
There we go. There we go.
My man, Anthony, we appreciate you, brother. Thank you as always.
All right, fellas.
That's the man, Anthony Slater, right there of ESPN.